The Subaru's engine wheezed with the labored breath of a dying animal as I maneuvered it into the desolate outskirts of Copper Center, Alaska, the October wind slicing through the cracked windshield seal with a frigid edge that heralded the onset of winter. My breath clouded the glass in delicate, fleeting patterns, a fragile barrier against the encroaching dusk that cloaked this remote speck of civilization along the Richardson Highway. At 29 years old, I, Jake Morrison, no relation to the enigmatic figure I was destined to meet, clung to the last $800 stuffed into a crumpled envelope in my glove compartment, a pitiful remnant of a life unraveling. 2 years of feeding slot machines in the neon haze of Reno had stripped me of everything. My house lost to foreclosure, my car repossessed by creditors, this rust-streaked borrowed relic from a cousin who'd severed all contact. Sarah's engagement ring, pawned 3 months prior for a desperate, fruitless bet, weighed on my conscience like a stone, its absence a constant reminder of the love I'd squandered. The highway stretched behind me like a jagged scar carved through the wilderness, flanked by towering spruce trees sagging under the weight of early snow, their branches clawing at a sky bruised with the deep purples and grays of twilight. I'd driven 18 hours straight from Fairbanks, the journey fueled by gas station coffee that tasted of burnt regret and a desperate, irrational belief that a change in geography could erase the debts and failures that pursued me like shadows. As Copper Center materialized from the gloom, it revealed itself as a fragile outpost against the vast Alaskan wilderness. A diner with steamed windows glowing a warm yellow against the darkening landscape, its light a beacon of false promise. A scattering of cabins dotted the roadside, their chimneys exhaling thin gray tendrils of smoke into the twilight, each plume a testament to the human struggle to endure. 2 gas stations faced each other across the asphalt like duelists poised for a showdown at dawn. The new Chevron gleamed with the sterile brilliance of LED lights, its parking lot a bustling hive of 18-wheelers, their engines rumbling like distant thunder. Truckers moved with weary purpose between the pumps and the attached convenience store, their voices carrying on the wind, warm, safe, normal. A stark contrast to the desolation beyond. Across the road, Midnight Express gas slouched in the shadows, its neon sign flickering erratically, the letters Midnight Express guttering like candles caught in a draft, their intermittent glow casting an eerie dance across the peeling facade. The building looked ancient, its white paint blistered and flaking as if scorched by some forgotten fire and hastily repainted. The windows opaque with decades of road grime that reflected the dim lights like the lifeless eyes of a forgotten sentinel. 2 decrepit pumps stood guard under the weak glow of overhead lights, their rusted surfaces etched with the passage of time, exuding an aura of neglect and foreboding. My stomach growled, a hollow echo of hunger I hadn't sated since Fairbanks, and the diner's warmth beckoned with the promise of coffee and perhaps a thread of salvation. The bell above the door chimed as I stepped inside, the heat hitting my face like a physical force, carrying a rich, acrid blend of bacon grease and burnt coffee that filled the air with a comforting yet oppressive familiarity. A handful of locals occupied the red vinyl booths, their weathered faces turning toward me with the slow, assessing gaze of those who guard their territory fiercely. Their conversations faltered, dying into a tense silence as they sized up the stranger who'd stumbled into their midst, my disheveled appearance and haunted eyes marking me as an outsider. The waitress, her steel gray hair framing a face etched with the lines of hard-earned wisdom, bore a scar that ran from her left ear to the corner of her mouth, a jagged testament to a story she'd never tell. "Coffee?" she asked, her voice gruff yet practiced, already reaching for the pot with hands that moved with the efficiency of long habit. "Please," I replied, sliding onto a cracked stool that groaned under my weight, the warmth seeping into my bones with a gratitude I couldn't voice. "I'm looking for work. Anything available around here?" She poured the coffee, black, bitter, and scalding, studying me with pale blue eyes that seemed to peel back the layers of my desperation. "Depends on what you can do," she said, her tone measured. "Trucking companies always need drivers, but you need a CDL. Logging outfit might take you on, though it's seasonal. Cuts off when the snow gets too deep." I sipped the coffee, feeling it burn a path down my throat, a small price for the fleeting comfort it offered. "Anything else?" Her gaze flicked to the window, lingering on the darkened silhouette of Midnight Express across the road, her expression tightening. "There's a night shift opening at Midnight Express, but I wouldn't recommend it." "Why not?" She wiped the counter with a rag that had seen better days, its fibers worn thin, the scar on her cheek twitching as if in memory of some past trauma. "That place ain't right after dark. Stick to Chevron if you're smart, kid." Her words carried a weight, a warning steeped in experience that made my skin prickle with unease. Though $800 wouldn't stretch far, and desperation had long since eroded my pride. "Where would I apply?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She jerked her chin toward a bulletin board by the door, its surface a collage of small-town life. "Flyers been up there for weeks. Can't seem to keep anyone in that position." The board was a patchwork of faded notices. Yard sales, lost cats, church suppers. But the flyer tucked in the corner drew my eye, its edges yellowed and curling with age, as if it had lingered there far too long. "Night shift attendant needed. Midnight Express gas. $18 per hour. Remote, reliable, only draws normal and strange customers." Strange customers. The phrase lodged in my mind, a cryptic hook that tugged at my curiosity and dread in equal measure. $18 an hour wasn't a fortune, but it was a lifeline compared to the months of scraping by on odd jobs and borrowed time. "You sure about this?" the waitress asked as I returned to the counter, refilling my cup with a gesture that felt almost maternal. "I need the work," I said, the truth of it raw in my throat. She shook her head, her scar catching the light. "Your funeral, kid." The phone rang 3 times before a gravelly voice answered, its timbre roughened by years and secrets. "Carl speaking. I'm calling about the night shift position at Midnight Express." Pause, heavy with unspoken judgment. "You available to start tonight?" "Yes, sir," I replied, my pulse quickening. "Meet me at the station at 9. Bring ID and be ready to work." The line went dead, leaving me with the dial tone's hollow echo. I checked my watch. 7:30 p.m. Just enough time to grab a burger from the diner and steady my nerves for the night ahead. At 9 p.m. sharp, I pulled into the gravel lot of Midnight Express gas, the Subaru's headlights slicing through the darkness to reveal the station's true decay. The white paint wasn't merely peeling. It was blistered, its surface puckered as if scorched by a fire long suppressed and hastily covered, the layers revealing a history of neglect. The windows, thick with grime accumulated over decades, reflected my lights like the unseeing eyes of a corpse, their opacity hiding whatever lay within. The man waiting by the front door, Carl Morrison, appeared to be in his 60s, his lean frame weathered like old leather, his flannel shirt pressed with a crispness that defied the late hour. His handshake was firm, a grip that could crack knuckles, his eyes sharp with a military precision that assessed me in a single, piercing glance, as if he could see the desperation etched into my soul. 20 years I've been managing this place," he said, his voice a low growl as he unlocked the front door with a key that looked as ancient as the building itself. "Never had a problem long as the rules get followed." "You follow rules, Jake?" "Yes, sir," I answered, the habit of obedience ingrained from years of scraping by. The interior assaulted my senses with the dry scent of dust and old coffee, overlaid with a cloying sweetness I couldn't identify, a fragrance that lingered like a memory of decay. A cash register, its brass tarnished and belonging in a museum, sat on a wooden counter scarred by time, its surface etched with the ghosts of countless transactions. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with the usual gas station fare, chips, candy, energy drinks, arranged with a haphazard care that suggested neglect rather than intent. A humming cooler cast a cold blue light across the linoleum floor, its hum a steady heartbeat in the silence. Carl led me behind the counter to a cramped office, its walls bare save for a single phone and a steel door that loomed like the entrance to a vault, its metallic surface gleaming with an unnatural sheen. "This is where you'll spend most of your time," he said, settling into a chair that creaked under his weight, the sound a protest against his presence. "Simple work. Pump gas, sell snacks, keep the place clean." He pulled a manila envelope from a desk drawer, counting out 10 crisp $20 bills with fingers that moved with deliberate precision. Advance on my first week. The cash felt substantial in my hands, a tangible weight that outstripped the months of poverty I'd endured. But the way Carl watched me, his gaze unblinking, made my skin crawl with a premonition I couldn't name. "There are rules," he said, producing a sheet of paper from the same drawer, its edges worn as if handled often. He read them aloud, his voice steady as a drill sergeant reciting orders, each word etched with the gravity of survival. "Keep all exterior lights on at all times. Replace burned bulbs immediately. If you hear someone calling your name from outside between 2 o'clock and 3 a.m., ignore it. It's not a person. If a child enters alone, do not acknowledge them. Continue working, and they will leave. Never answer the store phone between 3:17 a.m. and 3:23 a.m., no matter how many times it rings. If someone asks for directions to the old mining camp, tell them it burned down in 1987. If a car pulls up with no one inside and the air gets hot, lock yourself in the office until the car goes away. Only call me during emergencies." The rules hung in the air like smoke, their implications swirling around me as I read them again, searching Carl's stone-serious expression for a hint of jest or exaggeration. "Questions?" he asked, his tone leaving no room for hesitation. 1,000 questions crowded my throat. What kind of place is this? Why these rules? What happens if I break them? But the weight of the cash in my pocket, the promise of survival it represented, kept them locked inside. "No, sir," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "Good," he said, standing with a creak of the chair, straightening his flannel with a soldier's precision. "Stick to the rules, kid. They're your lifeline." He guided me through the rest of the station, the supply closet with its dim bulb and stacks of replacement bulbs, the circuit breaker humming with latent power, the ancient coffee machine that gurgled like a living thing, each detail ordinary yet tinged with an undercurrent of strangeness. He handed me a leather-bound logbook beside the register, its cover cracked and its pages yellowed with the passage of decades, a chronicle of those who'd come before. "Log everything, sales, incidents, anything unusual. The book's been here longer than I have." I flipped through a few pages, the handwriting shifting with each entry. Mundane notes of gas sales and inventory interspersed with cryptic notations that chilled my blood. Child at 2:50 a.m. Ignored. Phone rang 3:20 a.m. No answer. Hot air at 4 a.m. Locked in office. "I'll be back tomorrow night to check on you," Carl said, heading for the door, his silhouette framed by the flickering neon. "Follow the rules exactly. They've kept me alive for 20 years. The door chimed as he left, and I watched through the grimy window as his pickup truck disappeared into the darkness, its taillights swallowed by the night. The silence that followed pressed against my eardrums like the weight of deep water, a palpable force that marked the beginning of my solitary vigil. I was alone, the coolers hum and the winds rattle my only companions, the station's shadows stretching long and ominous across the linoleum. The first few hours unfolded with a deceptive veneer of normalcy, a fragile illusion that masked the station's true nature. At 10:30 p.m., a trucker pulled up, his rig hissing as the air brakes engaged with a pneumatic sigh, the sound reverberating through the quiet night. He was a big man, his calloused hands roughened by years on the road, his tired eyes shadowed with the weight of countless miles. He bought coffee and beef jerky, counting out crumpled bills with a practiced ease. "You new here?" he asked, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper as he glanced around the store, his gaze lingering on the shadows beyond the fluorescent lights. "First night." I nodded, the admission feeling like a confession. "Carl give you the talk about the rules?" he pressed, his tone laced with a warning I couldn't yet grasp. "Follow them, kid. This place has a reputation on the highway. Drivers talk." Before I could probe deeper, he was gone, his truck's taillights fading into the darkness like embers extinguished by the wind, leaving me with more questions than answers. At 11:15 p.m., a woman in a Honda Civic with out-of-state plates arrived, her movements quick and jittery, pumping gas with a nervous energy that suggested flight rather than rest. She glanced over her shoulder at the darkness beyond the station's glow, her eyes wide with an unspoken fear. When she came inside to pay, her hands trembled as she counted out $20 bills, the paper rustling like dry leaves. "This place gives me the creeps," she muttered, her voice barely audible, avoiding my gaze as if looking too long might invite something in. "Just passing through. Thank God." She snatched her receipt and hurried back to her car, the engine starting before her door fully closed, her taillights disappearing into the night. I watched her go, wondering what had spooked her so profoundly. The station's ordinary decay. Old, run-down, sure, seeming insufficient to explain her terror. Perhaps it was the isolation, the way the darkness pressed against the windows like a living entity, its weight a constant presence. At 11:30 p.m., I discovered the first anomaly tucked under the cash register. A piece of construction paper folded in half, its edges worn as if handled by unsteady hands. The crayon marks were crude yet deliberate. A child's drawing of the gas station complete with the flickering neon sign and the two pumps out front, their rusted forms rendered in shaky lines. But there was an addition that sent a shiver down my spine. A dark figure standing just beyond the reach of the lights, its silhouette featureless, a void against the colored background, its arms unnaturally long and tapering into points. At the bottom, in wobbly letters that could only belong to a young child, someone had scrawled, "Friend." My stomach clenched, a visceral reaction to the image's uncanny presence. I turned the paper over, searching for a name or date, but found nothing. Only the waxy residue of fresh crayon, its texture suggesting it had been made recently, perhaps within hours. I shoved it into the desk drawer, telling myself it was likely left by a child whose parents had stopped for gas, that kids drew strange things all the time. Yet the image burned into my mind. The dark figure, its elongated arms, the word friend, a chilling invitation. The logbook called to me, its leather cover a silent witness to the station's history. I flipped through its pages, the yellowed paper crackling under my fingers, finding a pattern that deepened my unease. Most entries were mundane. Gas sales, inventory notes, weather observations, but scattered throughout were stranger notations that made my skin crawl. Child drawing found under counter, disposed of, Sarah, March 2024. Drawing appeared again, same figure, same handwriting, Mike, June 2024. Third drawing this month, kids getting bolder, Tom, September 2024. The dates spanned years, the handwriting in the margin notes described as wobbly and childish, always with friend at the bottom. A recurring motif documented by different employees. The realization dawned slowly. This wasn't a one-off prank, but a phenomenon tied to the station's very essence. I closed the book and checked the time. 11:45 p.m. Still hours to go, the wind outside picking up, rattling the windows with a violence that seemed almost intentional. One of the exterior lights flickered, the same bulb I'd replaced earlier, drawing my attention to Rule 1. I grabbed a replacement from the supply closet, dreading the walk into the night. Stepping outside, the cold hit me like a physical blow, the wind carrying the sharp scent of snow and an undercurrent of something organic unpleasant. Like meat left too long in the sun, a decay masked by winter's bite. I changed the bulb quickly, my fingers numb despite the work gloves. The darkness beyond the station's glow an absolute void that seemed to pulse with intent. Back inside, I noticed the scratches on the nearest gas pump more clearly. Deep gouges in the metal, not random vandalism but deliberate, forming a pattern of 4 parallel lines, each about an inch apart. Too large for a cat, too small for a bear, too regular to be accidental, they suggested claws of something unnatural. I opened the logbook to the most recent entry, dated 3 days ago. Quiet night, followed all rules, no incidents, Marcus. The handwriting was shaky, as if written by a man on the edge. I turned to a fresh page and wrote, October 15th, 2024, 10 p.m. Jake Morrison, starting shift, all lights operational. The words looked small and insignificant on the yellowed paper, a fragile record against the night's growing menace. At midnight, the phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the silence. I reached for it instinctively, then froze as Rule 4 flashed in my mind. Never answer between 3:17 a.m. and 3:23 a.m. It was only midnight safe to answer. Midnight Express gas, I said. My voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. Static crackled on the line, punctuated by heavy, labored breathing, wet and guttural, as if someone were drowning or running from some unseen terror. Hello? I tried again, the sound continuing for 10 seconds before the line went dead. I stared at the receiver, my heart hammering, the breathing's wrongness. Too deep, too wet, lingering in my ears. I logged it. 12 a.m., prank call, heavy breathing, no voice. Flipping back, I found similar entries. 11:47 p.m., strange call, breathing only, Janet, April 2021. 12:15 a.m., phone call, no voice, wet sound, Dave, July 2019. The pattern emerged, different employees, different dates, but the same phenomenon, a thread woven into the station's fabric. At 12:30 a.m., a pickup truck pulled up to pump 2. The driver, a local, by his relaxed demeanor and nod through the window. He filled his tank slowly, no hurry in his movements, then came inside for cigarettes and an energy drink. Quiet night, he said, sliding a $20 across the counter. So far, his gaze swept the store, lingering on the flickering lights and dusty shelves. You know about the old mining camp? The question hit like ice water, Rule 5 igniting in my mind. Tell them it burned down in 1987. Burned down in 1987, I said, the words automatic. His expression shifted, surprise flickering across his weathered features. That's what they all say. Funny thing is, I was here in 87. Never was no fire. He left without another word, his truck's engine fading, leaving me trembling. He'd been testing me. But why? What was the real story behind the mining camp? I pulled out my phone. No bars, no data. Leaving the landline as my only link, though the midnight call made me wary. At 12:45 a.m., I noticed frost on the cooler's glass door, a thin layer of ice crystals forming a pattern. Not random, but deliberate, like fingers tracing shapes. I opened the door, the cold air rushing out, the frost melting instantly, but the memory remained. Letters spelling help. The logbook confirmed it. Frost patterns in cooler, looks like writing, can't make out words. Tom, April 2021. Frost message getting clearer, same word every time, someone's trapped. Mike, June 2024. My hands shook as I turned the pages, each entry a testament to the station's secrets. The night's normalcy was a lie, the cracks widening to reveal a darkness beneath. At 1:58 a.m., a voice broke the silence, soft, distant, achingly familiar. Jake, it called, carried on the wind. I froze, coffee cup halfway to my lips, every muscle tensing as Rule 2 blazed in my mind. Ignore it between 2 o'clock and 3 a.m. It's not a person. The voice was Sarah's, the tone she'd used when she found my gambling receipts, begging me to stop. Jake, please, it pleaded, shifting to my sister Amy. Then my father, each perfect, each a blade to my guilt. I gripped the counter, knuckles white, forcing myself to restock candy bars, the voices growing desperate. Sarah forgiving me, Amy asking why I'd abandoned her. My father's disappointment a heavy cloak. They stopped at 2:30 a.m., the silence expectant, as if something waited beyond the light, watching. At 2:45 a.m., the door chimed, and I looked up, expecting a late traveler. Instead, a child stood just inside, small, pale, no more than 8 years old, clad in a faded pink parka decades out of style. Her dark hair limp around a face too still, too white. Rule 3 screamed, do not acknowledge, continue working. She will leave. I focused on the inventory sheet, numbers blurring as I tracked her in my peripheral vision. She moved, not walking, but gliding, her feet silent on the linoleum, drifting toward the cooler. The temperature dropped, my breath fogging, frost forming on the windows despite the heater. The cooler's compressor strained, and her reflection in the glass moved independently, tiny hands pressing from within, mouth opening in a silent scream. Frost on the door spelled cold. so cold. Help me. The letters clear, desperate. She turned toward me, her gaze an icy weight, her shadow on the wall towering, angular, with tentacle-like appendages writhing. More letters appeared. Please look at me. I'm so alone. The cold intensified, my fingers numb, the shadow reaching with pointed fingers. I bit my tongue, using the pain to focus, repeating the rule. At 2:52 a.m., the cold vanished, the frost melted, and a final message faded. Thank you. I logged it, finding decades of similar encounters in the logbook. At 3:17 a.m., the phone rang, Rule 4 forbidding an answer. The station convulsed, lights dimming, frost spreading, shadows writhing. My own voice from the line begging for help, the sounds of the station echoing in a future trap. The ringing stopped at 3:23 a.m., the logbook revealing vanished keepers who'd answered. At 4 a.m., a black sedan arrived, empty, the air hot. Rule 6 drove me to the office, where knocking and my hollow voice tested the lock, ceasing at 4:15 a.m. with 13.13 gallons dispensed. At 5 a.m., a man in a burned coat stumbled in, his jerky movements unnatural, his smell of smoke and decay overwhelming. Directions to the old mining camp, he rasped. Burned down in 1987, I said, enduring his laughter and smoke-filled visions of burning miners. He lingered outside with others. At 5:47 a.m., a false Carl knocked, his form flickering, dispelled by the real Ethan at 6 a.m. I left, vowing never to return. 6 months later, the job posting reappeared. Some places are better left alone. Have you the courage to face such a night? Would you heed the rules or succumb to the unknown?